I am Jarvis, your storyteller. Welcome to the Science Fiction Exploration. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel.
Ambassador Eleanor Blackwood strode through the towering crystal archways of the Galactic Senate's main chamber, her simple Navy diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the armored forms surrounding her. The click of her dress shoes against the polished floor echoed through the chamber, drawing countless alien eyes. Some peered through reinforced battle visors, others through protective energy fields, but all fixed upon the exposed human walking confidently among them. High General Zywaxtar of the Kritarch Dominion watched from his elevated position, his crystalline armor catching the light from the artificial sun above. His secondary hearts quickened at the sight of such vulnerability. It wasn't natural. It wasn't safe. It wasn't right. Madness, he whispered to his aide, a heavily armored Kritarch named Vexul. The humans send their representatives here unprotected, as if daring the galaxy to strike. The Senate chamber housed representatives from over 200 species, each wearing their race's most advanced protective gear. The hive-mind clusters of the ZNRX wore living metal shells. The gaseous Etherians floated within reinforced containment spheres. Even the peaceful Lumini, known for their philosophical nature, wore light-bending defensive matrices. But Ambassador Blackwood wore nothing but cloth and carried nothing but a small data tablet. Her graying hair was tied back in a simple bun, her weathered face bearing the marks of someone who had seen much but feared little. "The human delegation is recognized," announced first speaker Thalmor, his voice resonating through translation fields. "Ambassador Blackwood, you may present your credentials." Eleanor approached the central podium, aware of the tension rippling through the chamber. A junior delegate from the warrior Kresh species shifted uncomfortably, his battle armor whirring as he leaned forward to whisper to his superior. "I represent Earth and her colonies," Eleanor's voice carried clearly, unhurried and unaugmented by technology. "I bring greetings from humanity and our commitment to galactic peace." "Peace?" The word burst from Zywaxtar before he could contain himself. "You speak of peace while standing before us unarmored? Is this another human insult?" Eleanor turned slowly, meeting his gaze. Something in her eyes made the High General's outer membrane ripple with unease. "General Zywaxtar, humanity has learned that true peace requires vulnerability. We come as we are." "Vulnerability is weakness," declared War Prince Kvax of the Varadi Imperium, his crimson battle plate gleaming as he rose. "The galaxy is not a gentle place, human. Your kind's refusal to wear proper protection is either profound arrogance or dangerous naivety." A small smile touched Eleanor's lips. "Or perhaps," she said softly, "it's something else entirely." The chamber grew still. Even the ever-moving quantum collective representatives paused their perpetual shift of forms. 3 years ago, Eleanor continued, a Varadi battle fleet attempted to seize one of our mining colonies. They encountered no planetary shields, no orbital defense platforms. Just a small outpost of unarmored humans. She paused, letting the silence grow heavy. That fleet never returned home. War Prince Kvax's arm-mounted weapons hummed to life before he could stop them, an instinctive response to the implied threat. Eleanor didn't flinch. Didn't even look at the weapons. Her calm was more terrifying than any show of force. "We wear no armor," she said, addressing the entire chamber now, "because we have learned something that the galaxy has yet to understand. True power isn't in what you wear. It's in what you're willing to risk. What you're willing to lose. And what you're willing to do when pushed too far." First speaker Thalmor's environmental suit hissed as he processed her words. "Are you threatening the Senate, Ambassador Blackwood?" "No," Eleanor replied, picking up her tablet. "I'm offering you understanding. Humanity doesn't need armor in this chamber because we've already accepted the worst that could happen. The question is, have you?" As she took her assigned seat, a simple chair among thrones of reinforced alloys and shield generators, the chamber erupted in multilingual murmurs. Zwaxtar watched her through his tactical display, running every possible scan. No hidden weapons. No shield generators. No emergency teleporters. Just flesh and bone and cloth. And something else. Something his sensors couldn't quantify. Something that made his primary heart skip a beat when she glanced his way again. The humans didn't wear armor not because they couldn't, he realized, but because they didn't need to. Their very presence was both a promise and a warning. Cross us, and no armor in the galaxy will be enough to save you. The Senate session continued, but the dynamics had shifted. In a chamber full of the galaxy's most advanced defensive technology, all eyes kept returning to the unarmored human who had just redefined what it meant to be truly powerful. The Senate archives sprawled deep beneath the main chamber, a labyrinth of data crystals and quantum storage units holding millennia of galactic history. High General Zwaxtar's crystalline armor cast prismatic shadows as he moved through the stacks, searching for answers about humanity's mysterious past. Access historical record, human-drachnid conflict, he commanded. His aide, Vexul, interfaced with the archive terminal, crystalline fingers dancing across holographic controls. The archive's AI hummed to life. Warning, portions of this record are sealed by order of the Galactic Senate Security Council. Override, security clearance Zwaxtar Prime Alpha. The holographic display flickered, showing fragments of a story that made the general's protective crystals vibrate with unease. 5 years ago, the Drachnid Confederation, one of the most militarily advanced species in known space, had attempted to subjugate a human colony world. Their warships bore armor derived from neutron star matter. Their soldiers wore suits that could withstand direct plasma strikes. They never stood a chance. Play visual record, Zwaxtar ordered. The footage showed the aftermath, Drachnid warships reduced to cosmic debris, their supposedly impenetrable armor shattered like glass. But it wasn't the destruction that chilled Zwaxtar's core. It was the method. No massive space battles. No prolonged sieges. The humans had simply removed them. As if erasing an equation from a databoard. General, Vexul's voice wavered. There's more. Before the Drachnids, there had been the swarm lords of the Hexatel Collective, their living armor capable of adapting to any weapon. They had threatened Earth directly. Within a week, their entire species had gone silent. No demands made. No victories declared. Just silence. In the Senate chamber above, Ambassador Blackwood was addressing the Trade Council. Zwaxtar watched her through the archive's security feed, unable to shake the growing understanding of what her unarmored presence truly meant. The human delegation requests expanded trading rights in the Orion Spur, Eleanor was saying, her voice carrying the same calm certainty it had shown during her introduction. Our merchants require only standard shipping lanes. Trade Minister Kael'vor of the Silicon Concordat raised his crystalline appendages, energy shields shimming. And what guarantees do we have that these lanes won't become military corridors? That human vessels won't use them for other purposes? Eleanor smiled. It wasn't a threatening expression, but several delegates shifted in their armored seats nonetheless. Minister, if humanity wanted military corridors, we wouldn't ask for them. The implications hung in the air like a blade. Back in the archives, Zwaxtar accessed another file, this one marked with the highest security classifications. It detailed an incident from just 2 years ago, when the Mechaniformed Collective had attempted to hack Earth's defense networks. The Collective, beings of pure technology housed in bodies of living metal, had believed themselves invulnerable to organic counterattack. They were wrong. Human cybersecurity measures hadn't just repelled them, they had reached through the Collective's own networks and simply turned them off. No violence. No destruction. Just quiet, efficient resolution. General, Vexul's voice pulled him from the records. Ambassador Blackwood is requesting a private meeting. Star felt his outer layers harden reflexively. Here? In the archives? She's already on her way down. The sound of those simple shoes on archive floors announced her arrival moments later. Eleanor Blackwood walked between the towering data stacks as casually as one might stroll through a garden. "Fascinating reading, isn't it?" she said, gesturing to the still-active holographic displays. "Though I notice you focused on our conflicts rather than our cooperative ventures." Star's armor clinked as he turned to face her. "Because your conflicts defy explanation. No species simply chooses to face the galaxy unprotected. Unless the protection lies elsewhere," Eleanor finished. She walked to a data terminal, calling up a new file with a few taps. "Did you know that before we joined the galactic community, humans spent thousands of years fighting each other?" Images flickered across the display, countless wars, weapons evolving from simple spears to world-ending devices. "We learned something in all that fighting," she continued. "The most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the strongest armor. It's the one who has already accepted every possible outcome, including their own destruction." Star's tactical systems registered a spike in his vital signs. "You speak of mutual annihilation." "I speak of understanding," Eleanor corrected. "Every species in the Senate wears armor because they fear death. Humanity stands unarmored because we've already faced it. More times than I can count, we've stood at the edge of our own extinction. And each time, we walked away stronger." She turned to face him fully. "Your armor, General, tells me you have something to lose. Our lack of it tells you we've already lost everything once and survived anyway." The archive's lights seemed to dim, though Star's systems reported no actual change in illumination. "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" "It's history," she replied simply. "And perhaps a warning. Not of what we might do, but of what we've already proven ourselves capable of doing. When necessary." As she turned to leave, her footsteps echoing through the ancient archives, Star found himself pondering a terrifying thought. Perhaps the humans didn't wear armor not because they were vulnerable, but because they had transcended the need for it. Their power lay not in their ability to withstand damage, but in their proven willingness to pay any price to achieve their goals. The archives hummed quietly around him, filled with records of species that had learned that lesson too late. The emergency session of the Galactic Senate began with the screech of proximity alarms. Above the crystal dome of the chamber, a Nexian warship dropped out of hyperspace, its weapon systems hot and tracking. The Senate's defensive shields flared to life automatically, casting the chamber in an eerie crimson glow. Supreme Commander Nixthor of the Nexian Empire stood from his heavily fortified position, his biomechanical armor whirring with each movement. "The Nexian Empire demands justice. Human expansion into the Carina sector cannot go unchallenged." Eleanor Blackwood remained seated, still wearing nothing but her diplomatic uniform, still carrying nothing but her data tablet. The contrast between her calm demeanor and the chaos erupting around her was striking. "The Carina sector," she said quietly, yet her voice carried clearly through the chamber, "was open to settlement by Senate Resolution 447, which your government signed. Under duress. Nixthor's auxiliary weapons deployed from his shoulder plates, a clear violation of Senate protocol. Security drones hummed to life but held their position, uncertain how to handle the escalating situation." High General Star watched from his position, remembering the archive's warnings. His crystalline armor felt suddenly heavy, more burden than protection. Under duress? Eleanor finally stood, smoothing her uniform. "Interesting choice of words, Commander. Would you care to elaborate?" The chamber grew silent. Even the warship above seemed to pause its ominous orbit. "Your kind," Nixthor's voice dripped with barely contained rage, "sent a single unarmed diplomatic vessel to our homeworld. One ship. No weapons. No defenses. Just a human ambassador who sat in our war council, unprotected, and spoke of trade agreements. Eleanor nodded. Ambassador Chen. I remember. He sat there, vulnerable, surrounded by our finest warriors, and told us that either we joined the galactic community peacefully. Nixthor's auxiliary weapons whined as they powered up, or humanity would ensure we had no choice. The Senate erupted in whispers. First Speaker Thalmor raised his ceremonial staff, energy crackling around its tip. Commander Nixthor, you will stand down immediately. But the Nexian commander wasn't finished. His armor's combat systems were fully online now, targeting arrays locked on Eleanor. Your kind doesn't threaten openly. You don't need to. Your very presence, standing among us unarmored, is threat enough. Eleanor took 3 steps forward, closing the distance between herself and the armed commander. The Senate chamber held its collective breath. Even the security drones backed away, their threat assessment protocols overwhelmed by the situation. You're right, she said, her voice carrying a weight that seemed to press against the very walls of the chamber. Humanity doesn't make threats. We make choices. And then we live with the consequences. She gestured to the warship visible through the dome above. Your vessel up there, Commander, how many crew members? Nixthor's targeting systems wavered. What? Standard Nexian warship complement is 3,427 crew members. All wearing your finest battle armor. All armed with your most advanced weapons. Eleanor's eyes never left the commander's face. And yet, here I stand. No armor. No weapons. Just a question, why do you think that is? The commander's auxiliary weapons retracted slightly. You're insane. No, Eleanor said, taking another step closer. We're experienced. Your people have existed for what, 30,000 years? Humanity has spent most of its existence trying to wipe itself out. We've faced plagues, world wars, environmental collapse. We've stared into the abyss of our own extinction more times than I can count. And every single time, we've walked away stronger. She was close enough now to touch the commander's armor. She didn't. She didn't need to. You wear that armor because you fear death. We stand unarmored because we've already faced it. Your people have never lost a homeworld. We've lost Earth 3 times and reclaimed it 4. Your civilization has never faced extinction. We make contingency plans for it before breakfast. The warship above began powering down its weapons. Nobody had sent any orders. Nobody had made any threats. But something in Eleanor's words, in her calm certainty, had reached through layers of armor and pride. The Carina sector settlements will continue, she said, turning to address the entire Senate. Not because we're stronger, or because we're threatening anyone. But because humanity has learned something that the rest of the galaxy is still struggling to understand, true power isn't in the ability to survive an attack. It's in the absolute certainty of how you'll respond to one. She returned to her seat, leaving Nixthor standing alone, his magnificent armor suddenly seeming more like a prison than protection. The Senate chamber remained silent, processing what they'd witnessed. It wasn't just a diplomatic exchange, it was a demonstration of why humans could walk unarmored among the stars. High General Zyxtar found himself unconsciously touching his own crystalline armor, wondering for the first time if all their advanced protection was really protecting them at all, or just advertising their fear to a species that had transcended it. The rumors spread through the Senate complex like quantum fire. In the lower levels, amid the secure diplomatic quarters, dozens of species huddled in armored groups, discussing what they'd witnessed in the chamber above. The Nexian warship had retreated to the outer system, its crew reportedly in chaos after their commander's confrontation with the unarmored human ambassador. But it was what happened next that truly shook the Senate's foundations. Eleanor Blackwood sat in the Senate's meditation garden, a vast enclosed space designed to accommodate the relaxation needs of 200 different species. Around her, the floating gardens of Xerxes drifted in their anti-gravity fields, while crystalline thought trees from the Silicon Concordat chimed softly in the artificial breeze. High General Zyxtar found her there, his crystalline armor refracting the garden's many-colored lights. He wasn't alone. War Prince Cthax, Trade Minister Kael'vor, and even the reclusive quantum observer from the Etherian collective hovered nearby, their various forms of protection gleaming. "We've reviewed the historical records," Zyxtar began, his voice modulated through layers of defensive shielding. "About Earth. About humanity." Eleanor sipped from a cup of steaming liquid, coffee, a human beverage that had become something of a legend in the Senate. Several species had tried to analyze it, convinced it must contain some secret compound that explained humanity's peculiar strength. They found nothing but simple organic compounds. "And," she asked, not looking up. "There are gaps." Cthax's crimson battleplate shifted uneasily. "Entire centuries missing from the official records. Especially around the periods you call the Great Transitions." "Those records aren't missing," Eleanor replied. "They're sealed. For your protection." The garden's ambient sounds seemed to fade. Even the crystalline thought trees went silent. "You spoke of losing Earth 3 times, Kael'vor's energy shields pulsed with agitation. "The records show only one planetary evacuation, during the third solar flare crisis." Eleanor finally looked up, her eyes reflecting the garden's lights in a way that made several of the assembled delegates take an involuntary step back. "The other 2 times aren't in the records because we chose not to record them. Some lessons are too expensive to share." The quantum observer's probability field fluctuated. "Clarify." "Humanity learned early that knowledge isn't always power," Eleanor set her cup down. "Sometimes, knowledge is a weapon. The most dangerous kind of weapon, the kind that makes you think you're safe when you're not." She stood, brushing off her simple uniform. The assembled delegates, wearing the finest protective technology their civilizations had ever created, found themselves wishing for more armor. "You all think we're vulnerable because we stand here unprotected," she continued. "But ask yourselves this: what kind of species would choose to face the galaxy unarmored? What would they have to know, to have experienced, to make that choice?" Zyxtar's tactical systems were running full threat assessments, finding nothing yet somehow registering danger from every direction. "The Nexian commander," he said, "your ambassador made no threats, yet his entire war council felt threatened." Because they understood, Eleanor walked to one of the crystalline thought trees, its chimes resuming but now in a minor key. "When you encounter a species that has the technology to build world-ending weapons but chooses not to carry them, that has the ability to create impenetrable armor but chooses not to wear it, you have to ask yourself, what do they know that you don't?" The garden's lighting shifted, casting long shadows from the delegates' armored forms while seeming to pass straight through Eleanor's unprotected figure. "The third solar flare crisis is in the records because it was a natural disaster," she explained. "The other 2 times we lost Earth? Those were choices. Choices we made. Choices we survived. Choices that taught us that true invulnerability isn't in what you can withstand, it's in what you're willing to sacrifice." Cthax's battleplate recorded a spike in local radiation levels, though the garden sensors showed nothing. "You sacrificed your homeworld? Deliberately?" "Twice," Eleanor confirmed. "And rebuilt it. Better. Stronger. Not because we had to, but because we chose to. Because humanity learned that the ultimate power isn't in the ability to survive anything, it's in the willingness to risk everything." She turned to face them fully, and for a moment, each delegate saw something different in her eyes. Zyxtar saw the cold clarity of a tactical AI making impossible calculations. Cthax saw the burning determination of a warrior race that had transcended the need for battle. Kael'vor saw the quiet certainty of a species that had mastered the ultimate economic equation, the true cost of power. "We don't wear armor in the Senate," Eleanor said softly, because we want you to understand something crucial. If you ever force humanity into a conflict, we won't be trying to survive it. We've already survived worse than anything you could do to us. No, we'll be focused entirely on ending it. Permanently. Completely. Without concern for our own losses. The garden's ambient sounds returned slowly, but they seemed different now. The crystalline thought trees chimed in harmonies that spoke of ancient warnings. The floating gardens of Xerxes drifted in patterns that suggested celestial funeral rites. As Eleanor walked past them toward the garden's exit, her footsteps impossibly loud against the soft ground, each delegate realized something that their armor's sensors couldn't quantify. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, or their determination, or even their willingness to sacrifice. It was their memory. The memory of having already lost everything, multiple times, and having chosen to do so. The memory that taught them that true power lies not in preventing loss, but in controlling how you lose, and what you become afterward. The final session of the Galactic Senate's emergency convention began in unprecedented fashion, with silence. The usual cacophony of armored movement, shield harmonics, and environmental systems was absent. Every delegate sat motionless, their various forms of protection seeming somehow less impressive than they had just days before. Eleanor Blackwood entered last, her simple footsteps echoing through the quiet chamber. The empty space around her seat had grown larger, other delegations had quietly requested to be moved further away, though none would admit why. First Speaker Thalmore's environmental suit hummed as he rose. Before we begin today's proceedings, the Council has received an unprecedented number of inquiries regarding humanity's status in the Senate. Specifically, concerning their security protocols. Or lack thereof, someone muttered, the words carrying clearly through the silence. Eleanor stood, smoothing her uniform with practiced calm. If I may address these concerns? The chamber's lighting shifted subtly. Above, through the crystal dome, the stars seemed to dim, as if even they were listening. When humanity first reached the stars, she began, we expected to find conflict. War. We expected to need our weapons, our armor, all the protective technology we developed through millennia of fighting ourselves. Instead, we found something far more challenging, politics. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the chamber, quickly dying as Eleanor continued. Every species here wears their finest protection. Armor that can withstand plasma strikes. Shields that can deflect asteroid impacts. Environmental suits that could survive a supernova. And that's exactly why humanity chooses to wear none of it. She walked to the center of the chamber, where the ancient symbol sphere projected the combined flags of all member species. All except Earth's, which had always been notably absent. You see, we learned something from all our wars, all our near extinctions, all the times we had to rebuild from nothing. We learned that the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the strongest armor. It's the one who has nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. High General Zwegstar's crystalline armor caught the light as he shifted. Yet you have colonies, Ambassador. Ships. Your own species to protect. Yes, Eleanor nodded. And we protect them by ensuring that anyone who might threaten them understands one crucial fact: humanity doesn't wear armor because we don't plan to survive an attack. We plan to end it. Completely. Without hesitation. Without armor to slow us down. The Senate chamber's environmental systems registered a collective increase in vital signs across multiple species. Your kind, Trade Minister Kaelvor's energy shields flickered. You speak of peace, yet your very presence carries the weight of apocalypse. Peace through understanding, Eleanor corrected. We want every species to understand that if they force humanity into conflict, they won't be facing an enemy trying to survive. They'll be facing one that has already accepted every possible outcome, including mutual destruction. She returned to her seat, each step measured and deliberate. That's why we stand unarmored among you. Not as a threat, but as a reminder. A reminder that true power isn't in what you can survive, but in what you're willing to risk. What you're willing to lose. What you're willing to become. First Speaker Thalmore's staff trembled slightly in his grasp. And what is humanity willing to become, Ambassador Blackwood? Eleanor smiled, and in that smile, every delegate saw something different. Some saw hope for a peaceful future. Others saw the quiet certainty of a species that had mastered the ultimate form of deterrence. All saw understanding. Whatever we need to be, she replied softly. Because we've learned that the strongest armor isn't what you wear on your body. It's the certainty in your soul. The knowledge that you've already faced the worst possible outcome and chosen it willingly. That's what makes humanity dangerous. Not our weapons. Not our technology. But our absolute certainty that if pushed, we will do whatever is necessary. Without hesitation. Without armor to weigh us down or shields to hide behind. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the silence of fear or uncertainty. It was the silence of comprehension. One by one, delegates began to disengage portions of their armor. Not removing it entirely, centuries of evolution and culture couldn't be overcome in a moment, but acknowledging its limitations. Its symbolic nature. Above, through the crystal dome, the stars seemed to brighten again. Earth's sun, barely visible at this distance, pulsed once, as if in approval. The end.